We now go, thank you, to item 10, request to raise the amount of boot allowance. Thank you, Annette, for putting this on the agenda. This was a request that I made. Just knowing the amount that we spend, that we allow the employees to use towards the boots, I know what my husband spends on boots, and he works in a prison and walks on cement all day, and he gets them tore up. So I would really like to know if we could consider increasing the amount, and they can have a little bit stronger quality boot and a little bit, better for the winter. But I think Annette told me, this comes up all the time, and this affects more than just the road departments. But I appreciate you putting it back on the agenda, and I'd like to know if we could discuss this as a commission to make an increase. And I'd like to know how Leonard and everybody feels as well. So who'd like to begin the discussion? Annette, what departments receive an allowance? Let's begin there. And what is the current allowance?
All field staff currently receive a boot allowance of $100. That includes any and all appraisers in the assessor's office, field staff in planning and zoning. I believe they have a couple or at least one field staff member in the treasurer's office, as well as, of course, the road department, maintenance. I believe animal shelter has been made available to them. And they currently get $100. My only question, I guess, to kick it off would be, can the budgets handle it?
That's the most important question. Thank you. Leonard? Yeah, if you don't mind, please.
So were you thinking that they were 80 and we wanted it to bump it to 100?
No, I knew it was 100, but I wanted to go up some. Really, like at 100, you can't really find a good boot at 100 that I've seen. Maybe you, Leonard, you buy them every year. You let me know.
No, not even around in those two. Still took boots you will not find for $100. It's kind of hard to find a good. You can buy some plastic boots and still tow them for $100, but they don't last. I mean, the increase would be good. Help the guys buy some good boots that would last them a whole year, because boots, you stretch them out to get a year out of them. But I'm kind of with the net. We'd have to see if our budgets can even take an increase, because we've been looking at the boots now, getting ready, because it's time to purchase them again. The boots now are running anywhere from 180 to like 250, 260 a pair of boots.
So do you guys, do they get like a check and then they go pick the boot they want, or you guys buy them for the guys?
Yes.
Oh,
They
okay.
used to give the guys a check, and that changed now. We put a purchase order in, the guys go in, order their boots, we pay the purchase order. If it's a cost over what we're giving, the employee has to pay the difference.
And also, Annette, just wondering, like, I would like to be able to make the decision specific to the department, because I don't know that the animal shelter would put as much, use their boots as hard, but I could be wrong. When the departments have come in the past, why was the decision to put them all together? Just, it's easier, or?
We, at one point, were giving $80 per employee. And then it was raised for the road department to $100, which created this kind of oddity that we had one department getting more money allowed for boots when it could be across the board. So then the commission decided to make it across the board and just keep it as easy and simple as possible. So I think really you need to rely heavily on your department heads to see if
What they
that's
feel.
something they want.
And actually, the way it started when I first got hired on is your new hire after 6 months was given a boot allowance, and that was it. You never got another one. But then whenever we start pushing the safety, well, safety is, we're pushing the safety for our employees, so it came out through all those policies that we're supposed to provide safety equipment for our employees, which that includes the boots.
But are you saying you don't have it in your budget right now?
But I'd have to look at it.
Okay. Tracy?
I just have a couple of comments. The first one is we actually do have a policy that sets the dollar limit. So if we're going to change it, we have to amend the policy. There's the safety shoe policy that was adopted a little over a year ago. The second thing was in this research, Nick did tell me that OSHA does not require that we pay for the safety boot, and if that's the case, my question is that we need to find out is I think we probably should be fringe taxing the boot allowance amount. And that's the second thing is if that's the case, you know, are you guys going to be willing to be taxed on a higher dollar amount? Because I think it's a fringe benefit, if we're not required to provide it, you know, those are things that we have to determine that we may not be infringing that and we maybe should be. So that's the second thing. And the other question that I have about it is if we change it, what happens to the employees that have paid out of pocket already just within the last couple of months? Do we reimburse them? Do we not reimburse them? Is it taken back from this point forward? Those are the questions that I had.
How much would fringe be on a boot?
That I don't know. I have to look at it because it's just at the time that the boots purchased that we have to run it through payroll.
Is it like a $10 thing, or is it like, forget it, I'll just buy my own boots?
Well, it's going to be based on your tax bracket and your tax rate, where you're taxed and where you're not. Because, I mean, it's going to be different for each employee. It's kind of like the uniform thing. The amount that it actually cost them could have been $2 a check, could have been $1 a check. I don't really know. It depends on the whole breakdown for that particular employee.
Okay.
Madam Chair, if I may, OSHA does not require the employer, but they require the employee. And the reason that boot allowance came around to begin with is that if a department, whether it be the state or the county or a city, pays to have boots, then the department can enforce the boot policy. Now, if you look at the other hand, and this is the problem with federal regulations, is that if you look at the OSHA regulation, it requires that an employee must wear when the hazards exist. So if they were to get a foot injury and they did not have a boot on to protect, then the employee would suffer money taken away from the workers' comp, but OSHA would then turn around and write the county up for not enforcing it. So we're kind of caught in a catch-22. Now, with the highway department, we went out for bid, and I know that sometimes we hate the word piggyback, but we can piggyback off their boot allowance. And right now, I contacted the department, and a pair of boots that usually run anywhere from $160 to $180 is being bought from $107 to $120, considering, and their employees also have to pay the difference of the allowance. But, I believe that with $100, I think that it's a minimal to pay for the employees the difference. Again, depending on what they want. You can buy a good pair of steel-toed Ariat or double standard, I think is what the other boot, or even Red Wing. You can buy for $150 off the state contract, and the employees will pay the extra $30. Whatever they have to. The other thing that we did was we took administrative employees that may be out into the work from anywhere from maybe a day to 2 days a week on the average, and they received a boot allowance every 2 years. And they were able to go down and buy them because they don't wear in the office, maybe steel-toe footwear, and also for supervisors. We also did the same thing, was every 2 years. So the money that was expended to the employees that actually work in the field every day on equipment or in the shop or somewhere, they were able to get a pair of boots every year to wear. Supervisory personnel and administrative personnel was able to get every 2 years. And it seemed to work good, and it kept us in the same budget as providing for everybody.
Okay. So with all of that, like, that was a good lesson, but I think I just got lost on the dollar amount. Do you have a recommendation, or you're saying we could stay with 100 and go off a state contract, they pay the difference? Would you support an
I would
increase?
recommend that.
What about the policy? So I guess I have a bunch of
Well,
questions.
we would have to reword the policy to exclude the people that are in the administrative that go out on an intermittent basis.
We would need to add that definition.
What's that?
We would need to add that definition to the policy.
Yes,
Okay.
but with the change in policy and the change in personnel getting boot allowance, it would allow us to increase the boot allowance to $125, is what I've come up with the figure. That's what we're spending now.
Commissioner Tapia?
I think we need to leave it up to the departments. When looking at their budget. How they want to work it.
So let's say Betty's in the audience and she has field staff. She came and said, well, I think my people need 150. Like if we have a policy, but I guess what I'm thinking is if we have a policy with an amount, how does each department head then have any flexibility? Like how would you want to go forward that way?
So as it stands right now, everybody, there's just money in the budget and it gets done. And so that's go ahead Tracy, explain. 'Cause
My suggestion is maybe we can correspond the change with the next budget cycle, or even maybe do a little bit of research, because I think everybody obtains their safety shoes at a different time period. So maybe if we could all get on the same schedule, or maybe even try to work with the vendor to get a better rate or something. Maybe there's some research that we need to do before we decide.
And then you could research on the fringe, kind of more know about the amount.
Right,
Okay.
there's a few questions that need to be answered, but that was my biggest thing, is I think everybody kind of changes or upgrades their boots at a different time period, and maybe we can try to figure out how to get on the same cycle, to where if we're buying a bigger number of boots at one time, maybe we could get a better rate.
Good idea.
And the other thing is that with the department is every September, between the 1st of September and the end of September, everybody is given the opportunity to get their boots. And it kind of staggers the first. Maybe you may have to go 18 months, but then everything starts on the first where you get into the cycle.
And then just a quick question, if an employee chooses to pay the overage on a certain pair of boots, because for whatever reason they choose to, what happens with the fringe? Or is that covered, or do they continue to pay the
Well, if they
fringe?
pay it out of their pocket, if they pay $40 out of their pocket, that has nothing to do with the fringe. The fringe is
They're
only
still gonna be
going to
fringed.
$100 allowance. If they're under the $100 allowance, then it would be, they paid $95 for the boots, then they just get the 95. But those are questions that we need to find answers to.
Betty?
I wish Nick was here, but he had to go. But the last boots they bought, Nick is very cognizant of watching that $100. The last boots they bought, he told me $99.99 they paid for it. So we just buy them once a year, and that was a thought about. I don't think our usage is that much as to, we could maybe even go 2 years. I would hope that all these adult men have quit growing so that their feet would be
You grow out.
in the need. Although they might, I don't know, can we get an allowance for orthotics as we are getting older, needing to go out with these?
Complicate things better.
Thank you very much. So it looks like just move forward looking at that information. That would be great.